All right. Good evening, everybody. It is time to start roundtable for the evening. My name is Matthew Durant. Unfortunately, Paul Shimke was not able to be with us tonight, and I guess it's not unfortunate because he's got a family event, which is fantastic. It's been a few months since I was able to host, but I'm happy to be here. Just as a couple reminders that you can see on your screen, this roundtable will be recorded as always. So if we have any youth present, please go ahead and turn off your cameras. And then, just like you're doing now, continue to introduce yourself in the chat box and tell us where you're from and your council. And that'll be great. You can continue doing that while we go on with the roundtable. So, with that said, this month our topic is going to be Leave No Trace Cooking. Mark Hammer is going to give a wonderful presentation on this. And we have a few other items to go over tonight. We'll have a safety moment. We'll have a short little video segment, the video segments that I've been producing for the past few months. And then we'll have Scott Anderson with our FAQ, our frequently asked questions. And then at the end, we'll have a few minutes for Q&A, and we'll adjourn for the evening. All right. And as a reminder, if you could go ahead and also mute yourselves so that we don't have extraneous background noise, that would be fantastic. With that said, please go ahead and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Two. All right. And the Scout oath. Please make the Scout sign. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Scout law. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. And then, of course, the outdoor code. As an American, I will do my best to be clean in my outdoor manners, be careful with fire, be considerate in the outdoors, be conservation-minded. All right, with that said, we will turn the time over to Michelle for our safety moment.
Yep, I know the agenda said weather safety. That was last time. So since we're doing cooking, I wanted to touch a little bit on the safety moment on food allergies, intolerances, and special diets. Matt, next slide. Go. So again, if you want to ever look these up, they are on the national site. There's the website for that. So if we thinking about plan and prepare our menu planning, taking into account any food allergies, intolerances, and special diets, while it can be a big challenge, whether you're going on a weekend camp out, going backpacking, or hosting an event, it's at least something that you need to keep in the back of your mind to make everybody as comfortable as possible. So consider this, food allergies are on a rise. About 1 in every 13 children has a food allergy. Every 3 minutes, a food allergy reaction can send someone to the emergency room. There's been a 377% increase in treatment of diagnosed anaphylactic reactions to food between 2007 and 2016. And over 85 million Americans are living with life-threatening food allergies and intolerances. If you think about those numbers, not only are they staggering, but we are likely to know somebody who has some sort of food allergy. So what's the difference between them? A food allergy happens when the immune system overreacts to a food protein. It can range from mild to severe. Some of the most common food allergies: milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, soy, wheat, fish, shellfish, and the most recent growing one is sesame and sesame seeds. So any food can cause an allergic response, and some people are more allergic to more than one food. My son's allergist, he's one of those that's allergic to multitudes of food, says usually they come in 4s and 6s. So think about that. If they're allergic to one thing, they're probably allergic to more than one thing. Also, keep in mind that a food allergy reaction can occur anytime. So even if you've never reacted to something in the past, that does not mean that will hold true forever. A food intolerance is when you can't digest a component, such as lactose. Here's where it gets confusing because a lactose intolerant is not the same as having a milk allergy. They are two different things. So a lactose intolerant person can oftentimes have certain dairies, sometimes yogurt, sometimes goat milk, because it's the lactose they can't handle. Someone who's allergic to milk can't have any dairy. It doesn't matter what it is. So keep that in mind. An intolerance can cause abdominal cramping, diarrhea, hives, sometimes a rash, but it's typically not life-threatening. Special diets are meal plans that control certain intakes of certain nutrients. So some might be on a protein reduced or carbohydrate reduced, a diabetic, a low FODMAP. There are multitudes of special diets. Those are almost always recommended by a physician or a dietitian. And we have to keep those in mind. Now, BSA says that it's not up to the leaders to make sure that you have all of that the family has to be involved. Those people who are on special diets sometimes don't tell us until they arrive at camp or at the special event. So the more proactive we can be, I know our camp is in the middle of nowhere. It would take me 40 minutes to get to the nearest grocery stores. So finding out about their food intolerance or their special diet as they arrive at camp is not going to have a good result for them or for us. So the more proactive we can be before they arrive, the better off we'll be for them to have a good time. Next slide. So what might it look like? And the reason I show this picture is because I want you to think about if you have a scout or a leader that has a food allergy, and it may not be life-threatening, but if you look at this top picture, that's my son's apple allergy reaction. Can you imagine being on a backpack trip and accidentally getting apple juice and having to have to carry a pack 30 miles out? Just because it's not life-threatening, he doesn't need an EpiPen for it, does not mean that that symptom is going to be a good result if we're out backpacking. So try to keep that in mind too. What is your activity? And if they do have hives or rash, again, we need to be extremely careful about that. This one happened. Iced tea has apple juice in it. They didn't realize that until later. So it's really important to become really good at food labels. So reactions can happen within a few minutes, up to 2 hours after eating the offending food. Sometimes, but rarely, are they delayed several hours. This one, for example, is only 15 minutes after he drank apple juice. Some of the most common food allergy signs: tingling or itching in the mouth, hives, itching, eczema, swelling of the lips, face, tongue, and throat, wheezing, nasal congestion, trouble breathing, abdominal pain, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, lightheadedness, or fainting. Anaphylaxis. In some people, a food allergy can trigger a severe allergic reaction called anaphylaxis. It can cause life-threatening signs and symptoms, including constriction of the airway, a swollen throat, shock, rapid pulse, dizziness, lightheadedness, loss of consciousness, in which case this EpiPen becomes really important. Yellow is the adult form, green is the child form. If you have never given an EpiPen injection before, I highly suggest that you watch how to do it in the case that you should ever have to help someone administer it. Next slide. I did put out some guidelines. There is a BSA guideline for managing food allergies. It's a really long link, but it will be included with the slide, as well as if you know someone that lives with food allergies or you have someone in your unit that you're trying to help with their food allergies. These are some great websites that talk about how to work around that, what kinds of foods they can and can't eat, what are alternate names. Wheat is a horrible one because it comes in so many different forms. And then again, if you've never done an EpiPen before, watching that video or even having a sample EpiPen injector is really important to before you go out, especially if you're going to be out away from medical facilities for a period of time. So from the BSA guidelines for managing food allergies, a food allergy action plan, a food allergy may lead to a life-threatening allergic reaction. So what can we do as adult leadership? So meet with the child and the unit adult leadership, discuss the possibility of attending the camp and event, include the healthcare provider if necessary in the discussion. Make sure that they review and complete the AHMR to include the allergies. I don't know how many times we put it on the AHMR. We have an allergy form to go to camp, and still we end up with people who miss it. So just double check that. You as a leader, double check your scouts that are going to camp or to an event, and make sure if you know their food allergy, that it's on their AHMR, so that those that don't know that scout also know it. Develop a food allergy action plan specific for the camp, including travel. Provide copies of that food allergy action plan. Is the camp going to provide the food, or the event going to provide the food? Is the parent going to send the food with them that needs to be kept in a certain place? At our camp, we have a special refrigerator for those that have allergies so that we don't have cross-contamination. When we go backpacking, kind of the same thing, make sure that we have the food separated out. Determine if the parent or guardian needs to attend the camp event with their child. Strongly encourage for a youth who cannot manage their plan alone. So for those younger Cub Scouts, the AHMR is the annual health and medical record. So you're part A, B, C. And what food storage needs to be done both at camp, during travel, with the food service availability, etc. So that's just part of that food action plan. Again, part of this BSA guideline for managing food allergies. With that, that's your safety moment.
All right, thank you, Michelle. So we will go ahead now and go on to our main event for the evening. We'll turn it over to Mark Hammer to talk about Leave No Trace cooking.
Okay, thanks, Matt. We're ready to take off here on talking about Leave No Trace meals. Paul asked me to do this. I said, well, we had one of these just a couple of years ago where we talked about using meals effectively for experiential learning for trainings. And she said, yeah, but I think there's more stuff we could talk about in terms of, lots of examples and how do we actually, some of the techniques and stuff for doing Leave No Trace. So that's kind of what we're going to address here tonight. So some basic premise then. Food considerations certainly are a key part of all we do in our outdoor program. You got to have food. Meals are, everybody likes to eat. That food motivates us. It makes it, makes it fun. And outdoor meals are great learning experiences too. But then again, our food cycle basically has potential impacts to the environment, to other visitors. So we basically need to, understand what we need to do to make sure that our meals are not adversely impacting things. So certainly we learned through Leave No Trace that different settings and different preparation methods require lots of different skills, practices, and equipment. I'm not going to go into lots of detail about all those separate details. I'm not going to rehash a lot of the standard Leave No Trace knowledge that you'd find in the Scout Handbook or the Field Book, or even in the Skills and Ethics books. There's a lot of specialized information for how we do that. We're gonna basically look at ideas and some tips and stuff primarily here. So my premise then is that basically every scouting meal could be or can be and should be a Leave No Trace meal, as long as we're doing the proper planning, preparation, equipment, skills, and practices. So ideally, we should be doing this all the time. So that's where we're going. And last, we're gonna then hopefully look at a lot of practices and tips and meal ideas. So, all right, moving into this. So what is a Leave No Trace meal? Is it the menu? Is it a function of what we're eating? Is it pizzas leave no trace, but spaghetti isn't? I don't think that's the right kind of dimension to look at. I think that basically the how we prepare the meals and making sure that we're picking the right kind of meals for where we're going. Some of those things are probably more important than particularly what. You can probably eat just about anything anywhere if you're willing to, adapt your methods to do it right in the different settings. So certainly, I got sort of a definition here then, what's a leave no trace meal. I think that for those people who have been living and breathing leave no trace for years, this all just kind of becomes second nature. So it's it's not something that we really have to worry too much about. Kind of just happens for us. But we have a lot of folks who have not had all that experience, and our scouts, especially new leaders, we need to give them tools that they can use to follow the right kind of steps in order to learn leave no trace and to plan their outings. Key example, is planning. Planning is a big part. You'll hear me constantly talking about planning and preparation as one of the keys to making sure that we're following leave no trace. Our OE guide handbook is an example. In the appendix of that, there's a outing planning guide sheet that basically the OE guides encouraged to work with the Patrol Leaders Council and ask those questions that are related to leave no trace about the outing, and many of those will have to do with the meals. And we certainly have other resources that are similar to those planning worksheets. Josh Lamoth has done one, Ted Shigley's done one, and I think there's several others floating around. So some of those additional ones that are more detailed are available on our other resources web page on the website. So next step here then is often, in order to have it to be a leave no trace meal, there's some preparation that needs to happen ahead of time. So we basically we'll get into more details on that, and then to use some of Dave Hatch's terminology here. While we're actually on the outing, having the right awareness and knowledge and skills and equipment and commitment along, all that will help us drive the good judgment that we need in order to actually make this a leave no trace meal while we're actually on the outing. And then as long as we're at it, since this is scouting and we're supposed to be learning from this, to even drive that stuff home more, let's make this experiential learning, not just do it, but after we've done it, let's talk about what worked, what didn't, generalize it, and then apply the learning the next time we do that. So what's success? When is it a leave no trace meal? I guess at the high level, it's if we have successfully eliminated the avoidable impacts and minimized the unavoidable impacts, we were successful. So that's kind of a high level view. Let's get into some more details. Talk a little bit about this food cycle. There's a lot to it. There's the planning part. So you got to figure out, the location. What are the restrictions? What are our schedule? All the participants, how many, and what are their skills and stuff? What cooking methods are we going to use? Got to figure out, the menu, and then from that, you have to actually, get the list of ingredients and decide the amounts, and then we go do some of our preparation, includes the shopping and maybe advanced preparation and some repackaging. Got to figure out the right way to transport, store it. Actually, then on the camp out, there's the meal preparation, the cooking, the serving, getting it all ready, cooking it, serving it. Finally, get to eat. Okay, yay! But even while we're eating, there's things that we can do to make sure that we're, not making messes, and we need to, certain practices so we can leave no trace. And then certainly all the cleanup, the disposing of waste, cleaning dishes, pots, utensils, the stove, the table. We'll have rinse water to dispose of. There's leftovers, garbage, trash. How do we store that? How do we transport that? How do we dispose of all that? So that's kind of all the the considerations. This whole cycle need to be thought about even back when we're doing our planning. And beyond just the food, then we've concerned about food safety, the equipment and supplies that we need at each step. Especially for beginners, it might be really good to have a recipe. I've seen some failures on some campouts because they didn't have a recipe and they added way too much of something, and it kind of messed things up for them. But having a site, figuring out the site and location, how it's going to be organized, how it's going to be set up, where do we get our water, what dealing with fuel, stoves, and if we're doing fires, wooden fire prep. Afterwards, make sure the fire's out, disposing the ashes. how do we store our food? The canisters, bare box, bare hangs. So those are, again, all part of this cycle that isn't directly related to the food. So these are all the considerations that we need to be thinking about as we go through this. Yeah, what are we going to do with the leftovers? And get more into that too. So certainly we need to consider the all those aspects of the food cycle. We also need to, basically, depending on your program level, if it's Cub Scouts, you're going to be doing certain kinds of things and keeping it simple. More advanced things for older Scouts. How big is the group? That will depend on that will drive some of your techniques and stuff. Do we have, what's the location? What are the available facilities? Sometimes even the weather. How's the weather going to affect us? If anybody's ever tried to cook Dutch ovens when it's really cold out, you know that maybe that wasn't the best choice, because it's hard to get them hot enough, for instance. So special cooking methods, often, the other things will drive our cooking methods, but sometimes we just want to do something special, like we're going to have a Dutch oven themed camp out, or we're going to cook over fire, or sometimes our special cooking methods will certainly drive the other aspects of this, whereas often it's just something that follows from what we're trying to do. And certainly our participant dietary needs, and thanks to Michelle for elaborating a lot of that. And another consideration, again, if we're actually doing a district or council event, then you might need a much more formal approval required from your short-term camp administrator. But even for unit events, these are important things to consider, even though you don't have to officially follow them or have a plan for it. You follow the guide to safe scouting for the unit events. So these are the considerations that are related to food anyway. There's a lot of other considerations on the short-term camping, but related to food, these are the key things to consider. Okay, real quick. So we kind of got all that things that we got to keep in our head and think about. Oh my gosh. So how do we think about this in terms of leave no trace? Which principles would apply to all this that we're trying to think of? Well, if I haven't convinced you yet, I never will, but plan ahead and prepare is an absolutely key to this this overall planning process, to making sure that we're getting prepared for doing things right. The travel and camp on durable surface, there are certainly aspects of that. When we get to where we're going, depending on if it's front country or back country, we may need to figure out our kitchen site. We want to make sure it's a durable surface, and so some of those considerations are, in there definitely. Absolutely, dispose of waste properly is a huge part of this, and so we're going to have more details on that in a little bit here. Leave what you find. Certainly some things related to that. We don't want to be building structures. If we're doing fire, we need to, think about the firewood aspects. Minimize campfire impacts. Absolutely. In many cases, we will minimize our campfire impacts by not having a campfire, but there may be other times where we actually want a campfire, and we need to, make sure that we're doing the leave no trace campfires. Respecting wildlife, big part of our food storage, especially. And it may even get down to our food choices. For instance, when I've been hiking and backpacking in grizzly bear country, I try to avoid strong smelling foods and fishy smelling things and stuff like that. So there's certainly aspects of respect wildlife, and being considerate of other visitors. Absolutely. And this gets back to, again, the different needs of your group, especially your group is different needs in terms of their their food sensitivities, allergies, things like that. But how we do sanitation will impact people who are gonna use that site after we have. I'm gonna take one, excuse me, get a sip of water here. Take a little bit of a step up from the actual leave no trace, the basic leave no trace, to maybe a little bit bigger picture here. And again, leave no trace is certainly moving into this direction and considering more aspects of this. But there's two key issues, I think, that are relevant to today's discussion that would be in this more of a global sustainability realm. And Certainly one of those is climate change, which is one of the biggest existential threats facing us and our future generations here. And the next one that I will also talk a little bit about is, plastics. And, sometimes we just get in the mode of, well, what can I do? There's maybe not a lot I can do. There's so much that has to be done, but there definitely are things that we can do. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit here now. One way that, or this, I don't know how many of you have heard of, excuse me. Project Drawdown is one of the world's leading resources for climate solutions. As they say, they keep track of things that actually can be done and need to be done in order to address the climate crisis. They have, it's an organization that was basically founded by Paul Hawken, and they're looking at this big picture of climate change. And they've identified and are, pushing for 90, they've initially identified 100 of these, but they're pushing for, right now, it's a little over 90 particular solutions and strategies that all need to happen in order for us to actually reach the point where we're getting to net zero CO2 and then longer term reduction. And certainly much of this, they've categorized them into major areas: electricity, food, agriculture and land use, industry, transport and buildings, sinks, land, ocean, and engineered sinks, and then health and education. So these are their key areas. There's an awful lot, of course, that depends on governments, politics, business and industry, and agriculture, but there are also a lot of things that can be done by individuals. And one of the charts that they have put together shows the top 20 high impact climate solutions for households and individuals. And they estimate that just of these things, I'm because of the slide here, there's another bunch of them that didn't make the slide, but they estimate that this can contribute 25 to 30% of the overall total needed reductions. So we do have the power to influence this. The top one on their chart here is reducing food waste. 1/3 of the food produced globally is wasted. Various phases of this, but food waste is, producing food creates a huge amount of our carbon dioxide. And through the production, the transportation, preparation, and then if we waste it, even the cost of getting it, disposing of it. If we can cut food waste by half globally, then that actually accomplishes 8 to 10% of the total reduction in CO2 generation that's needed. And another aspect on this that's almost as big is getting people converted to more plant-rich diets. That's another 10%. So I will include the link to the more details of this in the notes here, but I think this is great information to know. Things like recycling are on here, plastic reductions further down the list, but these top two things, these are relevant to what we're talking about tonight, so I thought I'd mention them. I'll talk a little bit about why do we have food waste. I've seen a lot of food waste on our scouting outings, and I think, looking at some of the reasons behind this, I think often it's preparing too much. So, way to deal with that is to pay attention to the number of servings and sizes. Just, a week and a half ago, I was on a camp out. I bet half the food got thrown away. It was very disappointing. But anyway, think about when you're figuring out how much food you need, what's your participants? If they're teenagers, they're going to eat a lot of stuff, but some kids are picky and don't eat as much. Some people are really big eaters. Some people aren't as much. So try to get a gauge on that. If you can do it in a way that people get to have individual choices for their ingredients or the amounts, then there's much likely to be waste, and we'll hear more about that too. In front country, plan for leftovers. Make sure you have containers and a cooler so that you can save those leftovers and reuse them. In backcountry, the quantities are absolutely key. Don't fix too much. Good estimate that I've used and it worked out well for me is, no more than 1.2 to 1.5 pounds of dried food per person per day, and have that be flexible so you don't have to fix the whole meal if you have several people that aren't very hungry. Another reason for food waste on outings, I think, is if we're using what I call messy methods. So, frying, boiling pasta. There's, sometimes you just end up with more waste from that. Another reason, preparation problems. So, they're struggling. They get their food overcooked, undercooked, too much seasoning, they spill it. Some solutions to that are to, have them try their recipes at home. Get them practice with cooking, teaching them techniques, have them practice getting experience. You'll get a lot less of that. And maybe encourage them to use simpler cooking techniques until they become expert at more of the advanced techniques. And then certainly individual preferences. There's, again, this is back to picky people. If you make a big pot of something and it has something in it that somebody doesn't like, and then something else that somebody else doesn't like, you won't get as much of it eaten, and you'll have leftovers. So part of the planning process, then include everybody in the planning process. Make sure that their needs, especially, and then their preferences are included, and then ideally give them choices so that everybody can get something to eat that they like. Again, we'll have examples of that. The other element then of the global sustainability that I want to mention, and that I think that impacts us here, is the single-use plastics. So packaging is the biggest segment of the plastics industry. It's actually over half. And just the scope of this, it's mind-boggling. 5 trillion plastic bags are produced annually, which amounts to 730,000 tons of plastic that mostly ends up being waste. That's just in the US. So the 5 trillions is worldwide. There's the US share of that. US currently produces and uses 50 billion water bottles annually. And most of this is, some of it's recycled, but most of it's going to end up in a landfill or our oceans or something. And most of that plastic is going to outlive us. And it's even going to outlive much of it's going to outlive our great grandchildren. So it is a big issue, and there are things that we can do about it. So in front country, don't use the plastic bags. Use your reusable containers. And in back country, those resealable bags are still an amazing thing to keep your food in the backcountry. But I'll talk about ways that I reuse mine time and time again. If you don't get them all goopy, then you can reuse them and not have that be waste. So of course, reduce, reuse, recycle is simple things we can do. Okay, so back to the in summary, then the leave no trace principle is to dispose of waste properly. And to me, that, implies throwing it away, properly. But, I think we need to go beyond this idea of just throwing things away. We can go well beyond that by avoiding and minimizing our single-use plastics, by using the reusable containers, avoid creating the food waste in the first place, save our leftovers, store them properly, eat them later. We do that at home. I wish we could do it more consistently on campouts. Obviously, have people use their mess kits and water bottles and not disposables. And if any of you are associated with camps, I've been to a couple camps with my Cub Scout, and I guess Scouts BSA grandkids here, programs at that. Camps, at least here in Texas, we're still all using disposables. I think it's disappointing. I'd encourage them to get back to dishwashing. What's that? I heard somebody. Obviously, we can recycle and even compost. I have a compost bucket, on a camp out. So there are various things that go in a compost. And on one of the trainings I was working on, one of the guys had chickens, so he had yet another bucket that he threw all the scraps in that the chickens could use. So that's even a little higher use than compost. So, okay. Next phase of this thing, that was kind of some background stuff. Again, Paula wants more examples and tips, so we're going to move into the phase of this where we're actually looking at some detailed examples, kind of a progression of meals that I happen to use at trainer courses, level 1 instructor courses. I used to use them at trainer courses. In the future, it'll be level 1 instructor courses. It basically, we'll go into some detail of the meal and cleanup steps and what did we learn from doing those meals. And I got another front country meal example, some back country options and ideas, and I have some tips interspersed with that. So Saturday lunch. do this real quick. We do post couscous with spaghetti sauce kind of stuff on it, which could be backcountry, or we do it in a backcountry style, so it starts from dried ingredients. And I'll do a tossed salad, cheesy garlic bread, which would be front country thing. So our cooking tasks, we wash our hands. That's key, and I'll get to that later too. Rehydrating the sauce, it's basically been dried down to a fruit, kind of like a fruit leather, and the couscous get cooked in bags. We add pepperoni to one of the bags and we leave it out of one of the bags because often we have people who don't want to eat meat. So we slice the bread, spread some topping, fry that until it's hot and browned, and have a yummy lunch here. We do this 3-pan cleanup. Everybody helps. Scrape the dishes and pans clean before you actually start getting that water all gunky. So there's a key tip is to, don't put a bunch of food scraps in water, because then you end up with a thin soup, and that's harder to get rid of than water that doesn't have all those chunks. But anyway, do your wash, your sanitize, your rinse, put the food away, clean up tables, and then we demonstrate the straining and disposal of that in the facilities. And what do we learn from lunch? Well, there's a lot of advanced preparation to that makes it so that the meal can go very quickly and easy to prepare it, and it eliminates a lot of messy prep. We're rehydrating that group meal in the bags, which is great because in the bags, it contains that. Although again, we're wasting bags, so there's trade-offs here. If you do the pasta in the bag without the starchy wastewater and the sauce in the bag instead of the pan, I don't know how many times I've been on campouts where scouts have tried to cook something in a pan and end up burning it to the bottom, and it makes it for, not only destroys your meal, but it makes for a horrible cleanup. If you're trying to cook it, spaghetti sauce in a pan, it's splattering all over your stove. If it's already in the bags, it's easy to save the leftovers and dispose of your empty bag, or use it as a trash bag. And ability to have the vegetarian option by only putting it in some of them. So that's kind of some of the techniques there that we did. We used a durable surface for the kitchen, picnic tables typically. And from the cleanup, what did we learn? Well, we actually used a tablecloth. You can kind of see it in the picture here. That keeps all those crumbs from falling down through the cracks in the table. Makes it real easy to wipe up any messes, and it hides all that vulture poop that is very typical at our scout camps here in Texas. So not to be underestimated. 3-pan method, doing the proper disposal of wastewater, the no chunks, mentioned that. You can also, you can use your bread to wipe it out, or a pot scraper. We properly dispose of our waste in several ways. And then we talk about it. Can these techniques be used in other things you do? Saturday evening meal, similar. Wash hands, everybody assembles and cooks their own. If you get a tortilla, and we have a whole bunch of things that they can choose from to put on it, different kinds of meat, peppers, cheese, various things like that. So we do the 3-pan no chunks cleanup again. This time we do the straining the water, we screen it, but then we demonstrate the rainbow method. So again, advanced preparation makes things go quickly. This one has a lot more personal choices. They can pick how much they want. If they're hungry, only want, they can have 2 tortillas. If they're not so hungry, they can do it just 1. They get to pick the individual toppings they like. We have gluten-free alternative, for example, the corn tortillas. We're cooking this in 1 fry pan. We encourage them to not walk around dripping food out of their quesadilla. Use the plate or bowl under it, sit down, and everything is prepared and ready for them, and they're scooping it out of reusable containers. In some places, you might want to use a scrim cloth under your thing, and that's basically a cloth you lay down that can catch scraps and stuff. If we're in an area that has concrete, then don't have to do that. Breakfast, have 2 different things here, but they're somewhat similar. There's hot cereal and then freezer bag omelets, and either of these could be either front country or back country. Again, wash your hands first. For the omelets, they write their name on the bag. They crack the eggs into the bag, add the extras. They note the time. Anyway, oatmeal, it's a cereal mix. They add fruits, nuts, etc., and hot water, and they mix it in their bowl and eat it. So one of these is cooked in a bowl, one's cooked in a bag. Clean up, minimum water. You're just cleaning up your bowl. Slosh around, sump your bowl. If it's have to have something greasy in it, you can put it in, drop soap, scrub it around, and rainbow the water away from camp. Anyway, sanitize. This is the Philmont, technique is to sanitize your bowl in boiling water before the next meal. Freezer bag, eat from the bag, or you can serve it in a tortilla and put your empty bag in your pocket, or use it for a trash bag unless you're someplace that you're worried about bears chasing you and you don't want to forget and take it into your tent at night. What did we learn from breakfast? Again, quick and easy to prepare hot breakfast. There was a bunch of advanced preparation, getting the ingredients ready. Personal choices, again, on the quantity and the selections. They cooked in a bag, they cooked in a bowl. We used up some leftovers from previous meals. That became some of the options for things that they could put in their omelets. And again, reusable containers, one bowl cleanup. And finally, lunch. On this progression, it's a no-cook meal. And so again, quick minimum cleanup. There's advanced preparation. There's personal choices, use leftovers, reusable containers. And it's basically sandwiches, fruit, and cookies for dessert. So that's the ones that's kind of, the more detailed view of them and some of the tips. But one more tip here, sanitation is key. Just in the last couple of weeks, I saw this article that came through from Outside Magazine that says hand sanitizer isn't cutting it. Here's why hikers need to start washing their hands. And the article is about a norovirus outbreak on the Pacific Crest Trail last year, and dozens of people got sick. And they basically called in the local health authorities, and they checked, and there was a lot of fecal contamination various places. And one of the key conclusions was that hikers use hand sanitizer, but hand sanitizer doesn't work on norovirus and many other viruses. So hand sanitizer works great for bacteria and some viruses, but many viruses it doesn't. So just good old hand washing with soap and water is the solution to this. And so for many years I've done this. Here's a picture of my little hand washing bowl. I can take this when it's just me on a backpacking trip, and put a little hot water in it, a few drops of soap. Key technique here, especially if you have multiple people, is you dip your hands quickly in that, and then you take it, you walk away a few paces and you scrub your hands real well and you shake them off, and then you go dip them again and walk over and scrub real well, shake them off. And I sometimes even do that a third time. And optionally, you can then also rinse a little if it was real soapy. And you can also use hand sanitizer at that point. So again, I'm not aware that, I have asked, and when I've been at Northern Tier and at Philmont, unless they've changed recently, neither of them really has a hand washing protocol on their treks. But I think it would be a great idea, and I highly recommend it, especially after reading this article. We'll include the link to the article in the notes. So that's a tip. Next thing we'll talk about is just a front country meal idea here. We call them meal bowls. They're, you can pick a theme. It's great to have a theme, or you can just mix it all up if you want. But we've done Mexican, Oriental, Mediterranean, pizza, various forms here. This is generally used for front country for a group. We often use it for family get-togethers because we have grandkids that like certain things and don't like other things. And anyway, it works great. You basically lay out the ingredients. Everybody gets a bowl, and it's a whole lot about individual choices. So everybody gets to pick the things they like and not. Of course, parents guide the kids that they're getting some a well-rounded meal out of this. But so here's the ideas. You start with a base, and this, depending on what kind you're doing, you can start with rice, you can start with chips or Fritos, potatoes. It could be different forms of potato. It could be mashed potato, it could be various other things. Pastas, quinoa, couscous, various things as your kind of your starchy base. Next, and again, you can decide which order you want these. We often put the greens down, some lettuce, some spinach, arugula, kale, depending on, again, what you have, what you want to mix in. You have protein on top of that. It's often chopped up and seasoned. Could be meat, could be fish, egg, chili, tofu, beans, various things there. There's, you could do grits on that base too, by the way. Veggies then, often these are cooked or raw. You can have, sauteed onions and peppers. You can have carrots, mushrooms, edamame, cucumbers, radishes, pickled beets, okra, all sorts of things. Toppings, it can have, chopped up tomatoes, olives, avocados, croutons, cilantro, sprouts, crumbled cheese, baked nuts, bacon, lots of things. And then finally some sort of dressing on it. Caesar or ranch, an Oriental, could be a salsa, you can do hummus, you can do a cheesy sauce, various things like that. So that's just again an idea for it takes some advanced preparation certainly, but again it helps to it's leave no trace in the sense that stuff's already, people pick just what they want. Hopefully they'll eat it all and we won't have a bunch of waste. You definitely have leftovers, so you have to prepare for that to make sure that you're going to be using them later, and that works out. Next, switch over to talking about backpacking. I done this for a long time, backpacking solo or with a buddy or even with a group. We usually do something like a quick either hot or cold breakfast, oatmeal, fruits, tea, various other things you can do. Have snacks during the day, bars, nuts, trail mix, jerky during the day perhaps. But usually by the time we get done with a long day, you're tired and hungry, you find your place to camp, you pick out the kitchen, the bear bag site, the tent sites, set up your bear bag in your tent, and then basically I grab everything that I'm going to need and I head over to where we decided the kitchen would be, and I plop myself down and I can sit there and do the whole works without ever having to move, and I'm not tromping around and stomping things, and so it can be leave no trace that way. But key thing on dinner here, I show you just this my setup. I have my food bag. I have a cleanup bag that keeps the I keep the little basin in. It has my soap also. I have my mess kit in it. That's the insulated cup, an insulated bowl, spoon. I have my spices, my tea, and I keep my toothbrush and toothpaste in there because that can go up in the bear bag then. Have my water bottle, stove, pot, various insulation for these pots. Once I heat the water, I can plop this into the insulation and keeps the water hot for a while. That's the way I used to do it, and more recently then I've simplified that and put the jet boil in here. That's kind of the setup. And so how does that work with the meals then? There's different ways you can do meals. So when we were doing troop backpacking trips, we almost always packed this by meal. So you can package your food by meal. Basically, any one bag has everything you need for that meal. So many of these, it's separated by items. So you basically can dump it together, rehydrate the individual items, and then combine it for your meal. Pour water into the bags to cook it is the way we used to do this, and the instructions are on each bag that says how much water needs to be added. There's a couple kinds here that we would actually do the one pot cooking. So we did the chili, we'd cook the cornbread in the Outback oven, and basically have a pot of chili or have a pot of gumbo and rice. So that was always yummy. Or other things, maybe it was a fry pan we have. We could do burritos, quesadillas. And we've even certainly done pizzas where pizza's great. We take some crust mix, you roll it out in a gallon bag with your water bottle, you plop it in, and you typically can have in an Outback oven, you get a pizza for 2 people, so each person gets to put the things they want on their half the pizza. It takes a long time to cook these pizzas for a group, even a group of 6 or 8, but if you have the time, it's quite a treat. And then finally, our last night on the trail, we often did a turkey dinner, and it was turkey with dressing and mashed potatoes and gravy and yams and peas and cranberry. All this stuff can be done with some advanced preparation. So that's kind of packed by meal. It's important to get, again, we mentioned the right amount of ingredients, and that gets back to the 1.2 to 1.5 pounds per person per day, typically. Back to the meals then. So packaging by meals one way. Another way is the approach is to basically bring separate bulk bags of various ingredients, and this is often referred to as the Knowles method because that's the way they do it on their expeditions. I guess you just have bags and bags and bags of different things, and any given evening meal, you look in the bags, you see what you have, and try to decide how we're going to combine these for a meal. So I use this for my solo or backpacking with a buddy, but it certainly is applicable to groups too. Basically, you gather and dry various items ahead of time. I certainly don't take I have a lot of different items I can use. I don't take every item on every segment of the trail. I may pick out, a few for this segment. And then when I get to restock and do the next segment, I'll pick different choices for variety. But it's a little hard to tell here, but here's mushrooms. This has to be poblano peppers. I think this was a veggie burger. There's spaghetti sauce made into leather. There's a soup mix packet here. This happens to be dried cheese, Gouda, smoked Gouda cheese. Here's my starches. There's, potatoes, couscous. I think this is brown rice, cornmeal, probably mashed potatoes, and just a couple samples of different kinds of vegetables. And the basic approach is I use my cooking my bowl and cooking my cup here. One of the first things we do is we have a soup mix that, it's again a homemade one. It's either a lentil soup or split pea, or we've done refried beans. And you dump some of that in there. You add some bacon bits and smoked Gouda and pour the hot water in. And then that sits for a few minutes while you're making up your bowl. Start your bowl. This is a little like the meal bowl. We start with carbs. You got some choice of vegetables. You have choice of proteins, and then some sort of sauce or something in that. So you mix that in the bowl, pour the water in that. By that time, the soup's ready to go. And I can't tell you how good that soup tastes at the end of when you're tired and hungry at the end of a day. For some reason, that soup just really hits the spot. Anyway, so there's lots of other things you can, do. Get creative here in terms of the things. These meals are not as elegant as Dutch oven cooking, or even as elegant as the meals that you can do on a camp stove. But when you're tired and hungry, yeah, it can be good nutrition, and it can taste darn good. So. More backpacking food ideas. I have links to some other ideas that I'll post with the notes here. So various meal ideas, hints, tips, and recipes that are from a cookbook that we published as a Scout fundraiser a few years ago. And this one, even though this is an old book, it's still a great reference. The Well-Fed Backpacker by June Fleming was kind of where I learned a lot of the techniques and stuff that I really like. There's all sorts of things you can do. And, this is a lot of these ideas were Maria Brown's from when we did the presentation back in, November 2021. But, you can use foil packs. You can have, different, if you have a group, several groups, you can have each of them prepare something different, different part of the meal. Potluck, you can make competition. You can certainly pick themes, have your Dutch oven cooking, all sorts of stuff you can do. So, and if you have ideas, throw them in the chat. Back to the global sustainability, just really quick then. Surveys have shown that youth these days may have some feeling of helplessness, and anger at the state of things. And certainly there are folks that evidence this. And some of us older folks, have a sense of grief in the sense that, oh my gosh, look what we've done to the world. So, what can you do about that? Certainly there are things that we can all do. And things that you can do is to learn more about this and spread the word and support the organizations and businesses that are making a difference. Voting is a big way we can support what needs to be done. And even in the bigger picture, even beyond the global climate change, the UN Sustainable Development Goals cover just a huge number, 17 key areas of things that need to happen in the world. And so I encourage you to learn more about this, and hopefully we'll hear more about that. Gates Foundation's another one that's doing some great work in these areas. So summary, meals are part of the fun and adventure. The keys to ensuring that our meals leave no trace are planning and preparation, and then that leave no trace awareness, principles, and practice. And hopefully gave you lots of ideas for meals and ways to organize them, and some other ideas and tips. Any questions? Thanks for coming. I think Matt will have a link to the survey. We appreciate your feedback. If you need to contact us, there it is. And we will post this to the website. And I would also like to thank the Roundtable Work Group for all the work that they put into organizing all these roundtables. I know it's a lot of work that goes into it, and thanks to them.
Thank you, Mark. There was one question in the chat that asked about, you mentioned compost. What were you referring to with that, I guess?
Okay. A lot of the food waste and stuff, you can throw them in the trash and they end up in a landfill. Or if you have the ability to compost, I have a compost pile in my backyard. Actually, it's a compost container, and I throw scraps of food in there and throw some dirt in there, and what comes out is just great soil that I can use for various things, plantings around my yard and stuff. So composting is, you can do it individually. I think some communities even have community composting these days, but that's not particularly widespread. But
okay, so part of the question, I think they were thinking, says, is this being buried in camp? I'm assuming you're not composting out in the wilderness.
No, this would be something that you do front country and take home, certainly. Although, Philmont has recycle programs. I don't know that they have composting programs, but Philmont recycles a lot of plastic bags and stuff. So theoretically, a camp, I guess. Have we heard of camps? I've definitely heard of organizations that do some composting of their waste. So.
All right. Thank you, Mark. That was excellent. I think we are all hungry now. Thank you. And again, this will all be posted on YouTube. This has been recorded, and we will have the slideshows available as well, for you to take and use in your councils and teach others. All right, so the next little bit right here is the segment that I have had the opportunity to create over the past few months. And this comes from last week. I was out on a local bike trail here in the Salt Lake City area, and I was just sitting. It wasn't any kind of grand wilderness area or anything like that. It's really just kind of right in the middle of the city, but it goes along the river that we have here. And I was just sitting there thinking about hearing the wind rustle through the remaining leaves on the trees, and seeing how things had changed, and lots of dead trees or grass or things like that, but also feeling about how kind of peaceful that was. Even though some of these things that, we look at the ginormous snowy peaks and we think, oh, that's the most beautiful thing, but there's a lot of small and simple, beautiful things that are just as important to the marvelous web of life and to the beautiful things that we enjoy out in nature. So here's the little segment that I created about that.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for participating in our roundtable this month. One of my favorite games to play while I am teaching Leave No Trace is the Web of Life, and I know that for many of you this is also a favorite. When I play this game, I have a set of cards that I use to assign each person the natural feature they will be representing, while we make connections with the string. Some cards definitely have a cool factor and are always popular, like bears, moose, and wolves, as shown by my daughters here who volunteered to help me out. Then there are other cards that are not always received with as much enthusiasm, like mosquitoes. However, the cards that always seem to be the biggest letdown are downed log and standing dead tree. I've had more than one person grumble about getting these cards out of the pile, but today these and other seemingly mundane aspects of nature are precisely what I want to talk about. We often get caught up in the grandeur of nature, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in many ways, the small and simple parts of an ecosystem are every bit as beautiful and important as the large and very visible components. Aldo Leopold learned about the beauty and necessity of downed logs and standing dead trees, and shared his thoughts in his November essays in A Sand County Almanac. I would like to quote a short passage from his essay, A Mighty Fortress. Every farm woodland, in addition to yielding lumber, fuel, and posts, should provide its owner a liberal education. This crop of wisdom never fails, but it is not always harvested. I here record some of the many lessons I have learned in my own woods. Soon after I bought the woods a decade ago, I realized that I had bought almost as many tree diseases as I had trees. My woodlot is riddled by all the ailments wood is heir to. I began to wish that Noah, when he loaded up the ark, had left the tree diseases behind. But soon it became clear that these same diseases made my woodlot a mighty fortress, unequaled in the whole country. At first, it seems odd that he would view his disease-ridden plot of land as a mighty fortress. But as Leopold explains, the web of life and how even the downed logs and standing dead trees are important components of it begins to make sense. He goes on to mention the following ways in which these mundane parts of nature provide necessities for all the inhabitants of the woods. Here are some examples. First, a fungus-weakened and partially fallen maple offers shelter and safety for a family of raccoons. Second, oak windfalls, or dead branches and trees that fall to the ground, are a preferred food source for ruffed grouse during the winter. Additionally, oak galls, or diseased growths on oak trees, are a particular favorite food of the grouse. While observing the behavior of wild bees, he says, "But for heart rots, there would be no hollow oaks to furnish wild bees with oaken hives." Leopold also notes that rabbits, who love to munch on the bark of young trees anyways, are particularly fond of dogwood bark that has been attacked by a disease called oyster shell scale. He then goes on to talk about how the chickadees love the dead trees because, and I quote, "Every slab of dead bark is, to them, a treasury of eggs, larvae, and cocoons. For them, every ant-tunneled heartwood bulges with milk and honey." He then goes on to say, "But for diseases and insect pests, there would likely be no food in these trees, and hence no chickadees to add cheer to my woods in winter." He continues on to mention several other types of creatures that depend on the dead and diseased trees as well. But the point I get from all of this is that everything has a place in the invisible web of life. Even things that are perhaps not as aesthetically pleasing as, say, glorious mountain sunrises and clear, sparkling lakes, the things we usually think of as beautiful. There is, however, great beauty and importance to be found in the small and simple, in the imperfect, and in the downed logs and standing dead trees of the world. So, in all of your activities and camps, make it a point to admire the small things around you. Take some time to look at and ponder these mundane marvels of nature that really do serve as the foundation for much of the web of life. To quote Beth Kempton, author of the book Wabi Sabi, Japanese Wisdom for a Perfectly Imperfect Life, she says, "There is a lovely phrase in Japanese, kacho fugetsu. It literally means flower, bird, wind, moon. It refers to contemplating the beauty of nature. This kind of contemplation can prompt reflection on our own inner nature and remind us of our role as part of a magnificent whole, which puts everything in its perspective." Here's wishing you many exciting adventures and beautifully mundane moments.
All right, and I just need to mention real quick, because I forgot to put the card on there, I need to credit the music. That was a piece called Butterfly's Day Out, performed by Mark O'Connor and Chris Thiele. So, all right. With that, let's go on to our FAQs, and we will turn it over to Scott Anderson.
And greetings, everybody. And I can assure you that I did not coordinate this with Mark. But my FAQ today, and if you'll step on, next slide, is why is the BSA not supporting the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs? Now, I get asked this question many times. I also get asked, why are we not supporting climate change? Why isn't the BSA doing more to help preserve our planet? So it is a very popular question, but there's a lot of issues that we need to address. Next slide. So just for a little bit of background, the World Organization of the Scouting Movement, WASM, established the Messengers of Peace and the World Scout Environmental Program as part of their framework for a better world. And the framework for a better world happened around the 100th anniversary of Scouting. Next slide. In 2015, the United Nations established the Global Goals for Sustainable Development, and these were to be achieved by 2030. So we are halfway there on trying to achieve these goals, and we have a long way to go. Next slide. So what are these Sustainable Development Goals? Well, they're a collection of 17 interlinked objectives designed to serve as a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. Next slide. And then in 2016, as part of that framework for a better world, WASM added Scouts for SDGs. Now, this was a movement in the World Scouting Organization to directly support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide. So why is the BSA not supporting these goals? Next slide. Well, the harsh reality is we live right now in a highly politicized environment, and our country does not have a complete consensus on the way we should be approaching things. There's economic development, there's protecting our planet. There are all kinds of issues. The BSA is very careful about not getting involved in political issues. And if you'll take the next slide, the Boy Scouts of America is wholly nonpartisan and does not promote any one position, product, service, political candidate, or philosophy. Now, that's a statement from the Boy Scouts of America, and it's important to put that into context when we're trying to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide. I'd like to assert that it's already built in our program. Next slide. Each of the Sustainable Development Goals, you will see that the BSA has some action that is directing and related to those Sustainable Development Goals. No poverty, for example. We do all kinds of winter coat drives, clothing drives, uniform drives, clean water and sustainability and sanitation. We do conservation service to clean our water resources. We have leave no trace practices. So each of these initiatives all have some facet of scouting that is addressing them directly. Next step. There's the next 6 goals: sustainability merit badge, reduce, reuse, recycle, our STEM programs, our merit badges. All of these things are designed to address some aspects of these Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide. And this is the last set. Climate action, our environmental science merit badge, all the way down to peace, justice, and strong institutions, rebuilding scouting, and supporting our partners. So the BSA is actively doing things to support all of the Sustainable Development Goals. What we're not doing is coming out and blatantly making statements that would involve us getting involved in politics in a way that might anger or disturb our membership and our donor class. So this is very important, and that's the harsh reality. Next slide. So, is there a way for Scouts to do more? Absolutely. I would encourage every Scout who is interested in working on the Sustainable Development Goals to go ahead and join the Earth Tribe. And this is a program that's an individual program through the World Scouting Organization. The link is here. Scouts can work on challenges. And I will tell you that our committee is working to develop a way in which we can sort of customize some of these initiatives and challenges in ways that would be valuable to our country and our country's needs. So next slide. The other thing is we do have a Scout Center of Excellence for Nature, Environmental, and Sustainability. That's our Florida Sea Base. They're doing great work in coral reef restoration. All of our high adventure bases are working towards getting this designation. And part of their requirement as being a SEANS designated facility is that they have to have programs in place that support the Scouts for SDGs. So that's built into the SEANS program, and all of our high adventure bases are working toward the goal of becoming and getting that designation to be a SEANS recognized facility. Next slide. So I think that was it. So it was just a fast FAQ. Yes, I think we can do more. Yes, many of us are passionate about the environment and working to preserve and save our planet. Those of us in outdoor ethics and conservation are working to educate our Scouts and to help move our scouting movement forward. I will say, though, that we are trying very carefully to thread the needle and to find those things that we all can agree on. And the easy example I can come up with is we all want clean water. So it's a no-brainer for all of us to come out and support clean water and sanitation. So in the future, I think you're going to see some rollouts of programs from the BSA that are addressing the Sustainable Development Goals. But we're trying to find the best way to navigate and thread that needle so that we are not getting ourselves involved in the political side of the environmental movement. And with that, Matt, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you for all you do to support outdoor ethics and conservation and scouting. And I look forward to the next time we gather.
All right. Thank you, Scott. That was wonderful. All right. So for our last little bit right here, we just have a few announcements. If you are a level 2 instructor, you'll get an annual survey coming out soon. I think Mark can maybe talk a little bit more about some of these things than I could. Mark, do you have some stuff you could possibly add to these announcements here?
Sure. Yeah, Matt said that we'll get that survey coming out soon, and then in December we'll be getting out the request to our Council Outdoor Ethics advocates to complete their annual survey. And there are tools that we have out there, we call their OEA tools. And if you got a minute, I can elaborate on it, or we can wait and elaborate next month. And then finally, as part of that annual survey, we also, it's really sort of a separate thing, but we ask our outdoor ethics advocates and the zone coordinators to fill in where we don't have advocates to basically, again, that's the reminder that annually we want you to go through your list of OE contacts that we have in the database and contact them. Find out if they're still involved, find out if they're still members, if they still want to be involved. And if they are, simply, check off that on the database so we know that these folks are still actively involved. That's part of our getting our database and cleaning up our database, getting the folks cleaned out that are no longer wanting to do that. So we're not listing them in their council list. We don't want to be listing people that if somebody contacts and they say, "Oh, I'm not doing that anymore." So basically cleaning up our database every year.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Next announcement, Michelle, would you like to talk about this one since this is the one you had added here?
Yep. So by request, there was a request to do a virtual council outdoor ethics advocate training. That is an 8-hour training. So rather than death by Zoom across one day, we're going to do 2 4-hour sessions on January 6th and 13th. They'll be from 10 to 2 Central Time on both of those days, mostly because for Hawaii, that makes it 5 in the morning and not 3 in the morning. So that's why we picked that time. To do the Council Outdoor Ethic Advocate training, you do need to attend both sessions. For registration, Paula needs you to send your name, your BSA ID number, council and unit number to the Outdoor Ethics Roundtable Committee at roundtable@outdoorethicsbsa.org. So if you will send that, that'll get it to us. I will be one of the instructors that day, as is John Gehring from California. And so we will tag team it together and put on a virtual training. Next slide. Why would you want to do it? It's a volunteer position. One, don't those people look like they're having a blast? So that was our Atlanta group when we did it there. But we want you to know how to do the COEA position. Even if you are not currently a COEA, but you're kind of in that wings. Some of us don't want to do it forever, so we need the next person to come up so get the training. The training is meant to enrich your scouting experience for members, help reduce our impact. So again, matching some of those sustainability goals. And then the training will also give the COEA some tools to help coordinate with the council's training, camping, conservation, and or program committees, depending on how big you are, how many committees you have, or subcommittees if that's the case. And also know where appropriate, the COEA may also serve on one or more of those committees. We do ask prior to training that you have a leave no trace, again, level 2. We haven't changed all the words yet. Either a level 2 or level 1 is preferred. but not required if you're committed to the training and the outdoor ethics, or really just want some additional information on how that position works. Again, it is a volunteer position. You need to be recognized by your council executive. So just going through training does not make you a COEA, but the training will help you then. How do you advocate and work with all of the different levels, the units, find trainers, work with committees, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why it's 8 hours, because we have, I think, 7 or 8 segments that we go through. So again, if you can back up one, Matt, if this sounds interesting to you and you would like to attend the virtual training, send your name, your BSA ID number, council and unit to the Outdoor Ethics Roundtable email, and then we will get you on a list to send you the link for the Zoom for that day.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. As always, we very much appreciate your feedback about these roundtables. And in fact, the topics that we've been presenting are a direct result of the things that you've requested and asked to see at the roundtable. So please follow this website or go to follow the QR code with your phone and give us some feedback. There'll be a short survey there about the roundtable and about the things that you'd like to see presented in the future, and ideas that you may have to improve and to make this a better experience for everybody. We'll go ahead and put this in the chat so that you can access it from there. So there we go. It's in the chat. All right. One more announcement. Okay. So it is not 2023 down here, 2024. These are the courses that will be put on next year, the level 2 instructor courses. We have one in April. They're not quite lined up here, so I'm not sure exactly which ones go where, but it looks like the April one is in the heart of New England Council. Can anyone correct me here or clarify some of this? Because some of those columns aren't lining up.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah,
Matt,
yes.
Okay.
New Hampshire.
Matt, it's in New Hampshire.
It's in New Hampshire?
It's running over 2 weekends.
Oh, okay. So is that April and then May? Is that correct? Is that the same one?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And then in August, we have the Northern Tier course, August 11th through 17th. You can find more information about this over at the website on the right, outdoorethics-bsa.org/training. And then, as always, we have the Dan Howells Scholarship available to anyone that needs some financial help to make it to a level 2 course. You can apply here at outdoorethics-bsa.org/Dan Howells. Mark, has that been changed and migrated over to scouting.org, or are these still the legitimate addresses to access this information?
Those are still the addresses. You can get at this information from the scouting.org main website or webpage as well. There are links to this information. There, I'll mention there is at least one more course that has been approved, but I hadn't gotten it posted yet. Sorry, I was working on something else this week.
All right. Yes, and Ted put in the comments, this might be the one that you're talking about. In Ohio in May, the Great Trail Council, May 9th through 14th. That's another level 2 opportunity out there. All right. And with that said, here's our roundtable minute for the month. This is also from Aldo Leopold's November. Perfect month for using Aldo Leopold's essays. He says, "To me, an ancient cottonwood is the greatest of trees because in his youth he shaded the buffalo and wore a halo of pigeons. And I like a young cottonwood because he may grow ancient. So the next time you're outdoors in the wilderness or in town, look at the familiar plants around you. What positive or negative biases do you feel for those plants?" All right. Other than that, here's the link again for giving us some feedback. If anyone has any questions about anything tonight, you're welcome to put that into the chat and we'll try and answer those. And we'll go ahead and wrap up the roundtable for tonight. If you'd like to stay and discuss anything or ask any questions for a few minutes, we'll hang on for a few minutes afterward. But we are finished for the evening. So thank you for being here and we look forward to seeing you next time.